Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Philly Factor. On this program, we have featured so many great organizations, nonprofits, people, personalities, museums that make Philadelphia so special. And that is exactly what we're going to do today on this edition of the program. I think it's safe to say, we say often that Philadelphia is a city of neighborhoods, but Philadelphia is also a city of museums. And I'm so happy to say that there's a new museum, relatively new museum, that is celebrating its first anniversary. And some people may have heard of it, some people may not have heard of it, but our goal here on the program is to make everybody aware of the Museum of Illusion. And it's my pleasure to welcome to the program Stacy Stec, Director of Sales and Marketing at LOL Entertainment. We're talking about the Museum of Illusion, which is in Old City, Philadelphia. Stacy, thanks for spending some time with us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
I mentioned that it's a relatively new museum. You opened a year ago because you're celebrating your first anniversary. So some people may be familiar and probably have visited the museum, and some people are probably hearing about it for the first time. So if we could start with what exactly is the Museum of Illusion, I think that would be a great place to inform our viewers about your museum.
Of course. So happy to share. So Museum of Illusions, it's a relatively new concept. It is really a global leader in museums that are in the immersive entertainment space. And the word edutainment is the word we like to use to describe ourselves. We are a very nice mashup of educational, education rooted in a regular museum, but also an entertainment attraction as well. So we really kind of mash the two up to create a totally new and different experience that people have been loving. When you might think that we're just like a selfie spot. A lot of people have probably seen us on Instagram or TikTok, but we're actually so much more than that. You really can learn a lot about vision, perception, and the brain when you come to the Museum of Illusions, which, is really just, it's a playhouse for the mind, if you think about it, where guests can come, they learn about vision, perception, while immersing themselves in the world of optical illusions.
You used a term that we are hearing more and more of these days, immersive experience. When I was growing up, we went to, whether it was the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which is a fantastic museum, or the American Swedish Museum in South Philadelphia. I mean, these were museums where you went and you sort of looked at the exhibits that were there. It was pretty much one-dimensional, if you will. It was, a painting on the wall that you were able to sit there for as long as you wanted to and sort of try to imagine what was going on in the artist's mind when they were creating this piece of work. But a lot of organizations now, and maybe even the theme parks on the bigger scale, are using this term immersive experience. And it sort of intrigues me because it really is taking what otherwise might be, and pardon my ignorance on this, a one-dimensional type of experience or a flat experience, and really immersing the patron, the customer, the guest into this world, in your case, into the world of illusions.
Correct. I mean, immersive entertainment, we've seen so many different concepts popping up, recently. I think there's two things behind it. I think with immersive entertainment, guests can really make learning and experiences more meaningful and more memorable when they actually immerse themselves into that experience. And I also think with the rise of popularity of different social media sites like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, people want to document the places that they've been. And there's a fun photo factor when you immerse yourself in an experience, which also helps spread the word. We're a highly visual museum, and people love to share their photos and their experience with us. But what it comes down to is really just making those memories, and you remember that experience, and you remember that experience positively when you immerse yourself in it.
So let's talk about where the museum is located and your basic hours of operation. We'll begin there.
Yeah, sure. So we are located right in the heart of Old City. So if you, if those of you that are familiar with Old City, we're really just about a block away from the Liberty Bell and the Independence Visitor Center. So we're really right in the heart of Old City. It's a great neighborhood. We feel honestly honored to be able to be, in such close proximity to these amazing institutions that, people have known in Philadelphia for years and years and years. It's a really special place to be. But yeah, so we are actually open every day of the week. Weekdays, we open a little bit earlier at 9 a.m. And we close at 8 p.m. But on the weekends, on the weekends, we're open until 10 p.m. So we are one of those later attractions. So, a lot of the attractions close to us and museums close to us, they close their doors relatively early at around 5 o'clock. So we are one of those later attractions that are open. So it's a great opportunity to pair a visit to the museum with maybe dinner out in Old City or going to, some other museums or institutions during the day. You can add on Museum of Illusions toward the end of your stay in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's a great idea because, like you said, oftentimes museums are open for like typical business hours, 9 to 5 or whatever. But the downtown area of Philadelphia, especially Old City, is always bustling with visitors. So the fact that you can accommodate people to get in later in the day and stay later in Old City, that's a great concept to sort of um, entertain whether you're local to Philadelphia or visitors to Philadelphia. It's a great idea in order to keep people tourists in the Old City area.
Right, right. And we see locals and tourists alike. And, I'm a mom myself, and, you want to take your kids, or friends, or even go on a date night, after work hours. And we're open for those times.
What should I guess a lot of times people say, well, what should I expect when I come into the Museum of Illusions? Am I going to be, people say, am I going to be like freaked out? Am I going to be scared? Am I going to be intrigued? Maybe it's a little bit of all that. I don't know. I haven't been there yet, but what can people expect when they come into the museum?
You're going to be very intrigued, and it's really going to, inspire you to be thinking about the world around you a little bit differently. Definitely not scary, anything like that. The exhibits are really one of a kind exhibits. We actually have over 60 exhibits, installations, and immersive rooms that are guaranteed to perplex you, surprise you, and ignite some serious laughter as well.
Wow. I remember, and even sometimes I come across these things, whether online, but as a young kid, there was always, I'll say, a religious card or a holy card that would pop up, and you would look at it. And not that it's only religious or holy cards that would do this, but you would stare at the card for a prolonged period of time, and then look at a white surface, and then I guess your brain is tricked into seeing that same image on the white surface. So I suspect that at your museum we're going to see maybe a little bit of that, but really ratchet it up a few notches.
Yes, you will see a lot of that. So that's, it creates that, what you were just speaking about creates that after image effect. We do have illusions that will do that. And for us, it's very important that guests understand what they're doing. For example, if you look at something and then you're supposed to look away for a few seconds onto, a blank wall or a blank space, and you'll be able to see something else. Like that's why staff is really important. And they're very well trained at the museum to be able to explain these illusions, what you should be looking for, maybe what you should do afterwards, maybe looking at an illusion even from behind a camera screen. It's really interesting how, we see things differently than a camera does. Humans have two eyes, binocular vision, and a camera has essentially one eye or one lens, monocular vision, and they see illusions very, very differently. So that's part of the fun in the space. But we do have a lot of classic illusions that you like the one you just described, or perhaps even something you have seen maybe years ago in a psychology textbook when you were studying vision and perception. But we have a lot of never before seen illusions as well. And then also the immersive rooms are a big fan favorite at the museum because then you actually become part of the illusion. You can appear to grow and shrink. You can appear to walk on walls. And some illusions you'll actually feel, in your body and your equilibrium when you walk inside. You might feel a little bit off balance.
Yeah. So where do these experiences come from then? I suspect that somebody doesn't just wake up in the morning and say, "Hey, I have a great idea for an illusion." I suspect that, and Philadelphia is not alone in having a museum of illusions. There are a few others around the United States. So where do these ideas or concepts come from? Who's responsible for creating these illusions?
Sure. So there's actually two entrepreneurs in Croatia. That's where the very first Museum of Illusions was established in 2015. So the very first museum, it's a very small space on a second story level on a winding street in Zagreb. And, the owners, the entrepreneurs who started the concept, they were very inspired by the cognitive sciences and, different illusions that they've experienced, in some of their travels or going to different type of art exhibits, and they decided to create this space where people can immerse themselves into that world and learn a little bit along the way about the cognitive sciences. They wanted to create something fun, something different, and it's really something that makes you use your brain in a fun way.
If you're visiting the Museum of Illusions in Old City, Philadelphia, is it this? Are you seeing the same exhibits or immersive experiences in Philadelphia as you might see in some of the other cities, or are there specific exhibits and experiences that are tailor made to each particular city?
Yeah, so the answer is actually both. So there are some exhibits that are the same between, our museum in Philadelphia and the original museum in Zagreb and maybe, the museum in Paris. But there's a lot of differences and a little bit of city flair we like to throw in. And our team actually has roots in Philadelphia. So opening in Philadelphia and really giving it that Philly flair was super important to us. So we do have a couple of exhibits. One is called the Building Illusion. So it is modeled after a historic row home in Alfred's Alley. So we modeled an illusion after that. We also did one of our illusions to be our take on an old school Philly diner. So we do like to throw in, a lot of city flair to make those illusions special. And the other thing is too, it's very interesting that, we do have an R&D department in Croatia that is constantly working on developing new illusions, and improving the illusions that we do have. And, Philadelphia being one of the newer museums, we've only been open a year, as you said, and we have a lot of newer exhibits that some of the older museums do not have.
Interesting. I guess it's important also sort of to dovetail off of that in that, if you're bringing people in through the front door, they're going to spend their time there. But there's got to be some sort of enticement for them to come back. So, repeat business is very, for any business, but that repeat customer, that repeat patron is so important. So I guess with the Museum of Illusions in Old City, it's important to keep those illusions fresh, new, to put in newer exhibits that are going to entice people to come back and see what's new or what's next at the museum.
Exactly. That's exactly what we've found. People that come to the museum, they come maybe, their very first time and they think, oh, I need to bring my family back, or, oh, I need to bring my boyfriend back. And, I've got to come check this place out again. I have to show somebody this place. So we'll see people that'll come back one, two, maybe even three times. But you're right. We have to keep it fresh. That's very important to us. So the model that we follow actually is doing a museum refresh and an exhibit refresh every about 2 to 3 years. So we've obviously been open for just 1 year. So in the near future here, we're going to be looking at a pretty substantial refresh where we will go in, we'll bring our what we call our illusion experts from Croatia. They'll come in, help install, these new exhibits, which it's very interesting, just the whole process behind it. Everything has to be so precise in terms of measurements and angles when they install these illusions, so you can see that illusion very clearly. So we'll have that team come back in. We will refresh the space, change out some of the illusions we have, and refresh some fan favorites as well.
Given the fact that we're celebrating the first anniversary of the Museum of Illusions in Philadelphia, the opening, and while you really couldn't control the bigger events of the world, if you will, how has the reception been? I mean, you sort of opened right in the middle of the pandemic, or the tail end of the pandemic. So to me, it would seem I'm going to go there because I'm going to escape what is really going on around me and get lost in these illusions, because it's got to be better than what we're living here right now. So how has the reaction been from people visiting the museum?
It's been incredible, to be quite honest with you. So, a year ago, we were really just starting to get out of that pandemic mindset. That's just how the events happen. And we couldn't have timed it, in my opinion, more perfectly. I mean, we opened our doors in March of last year. And that's when the mask mandates were starting to be dropped. The vaccine card mandates were starting to drop. And people were just so ready to get out and escape reality a little bit, so to speak. But it's been such a tremendous it's been a tremendous year for us. And we've seen, locals, tourists, and people have had great things to say. It's been a very, very fun experience for anybody that comes.
What is the typical time that a person should allot to visit a museum? Oftentimes you're in and you can sort of time it to be out an hour later. But with this, because there are 60 immersive or 60 different exhibits, I think you mentioned, you could perhaps spend more than an hour or two just making your way through the museum.
Absolutely. So we are a smaller museum. We like to call ourselves a boutique museum, if you will. We're only about 5,000 square feet, so we're not huge. So when I say 60 exhibits, there are definitely 60 plus exhibits in this space, and we make use of the space very well. So there's literally a surprise around every corner in the museum. Typically, we find that guests will stay in the museum and explore for anywhere between an hour and an hour seems to be the sweet spot that we see a lot of people inside of the museum. But people can stay longer, and people honestly can stay for as long as they like. We have an area of the museum called our Smart Playroom, which has these dilemma games, and you can, challenge yourself to a logic puzzle, challenge your friends and family to some friendly competition with some of our other puzzles as well, and games. And we'll see people back there, those people that are really determined to get those puzzles and solve those. People might be back there for, upwards of an hour, really trying to solve it. And, like I said, it's a fun house, for your brain. It's a playhouse for the mind. That's typically what we see, but we're not a huge museum. I mean, there are some big institutions where you can spend 2-3 hours, and you still feel like you may not have gotten to everything. A good hour is really all you need at Museum of Illusions.
We mentioned this at the beginning of the interview too, because today everything sort of comes with a social media component. So, people are going to tour a museum. They're going to want to put it on Instagram. They're going to put it on Facebook. They're going to want to, take a selfie and put it out there in the, in the internet world that's out there. So, I think you mentioned that there is a selfie spot there where people. I mean, of course, you can take a picture anywhere in the museum. But there are these spots that have sort of come with the territory where people are constantly taking selfies, and they could do that there at the Museum of Illusions, right?
You sure can. There's many, many selfie spots, photo opportunities at the museum. And the interesting thing too is, we realize that. So we try to make it easier for guests that are coming in that want to take those photos. So when you walk around the museum, you'll actually see these photo markers on the floor. So people know where to stand to take that photo that perfectly captures the illusion the way it's intended to look. We also have staff members that are more than willing and excited to help take those photos for guests, because we've realized that's a really key part of the guest experience when they come to the museum.
You mentioned that your museum, the Museum of Illusions, is a boutique museum, and it's I guess the trend today in many new upstart museums, not only in Philadelphia but around the country. What do you think that is? I mean, is it that people are looking for something different? I mean, they're looking for that immersive experience where they can spend an hour or two and not necessarily get caught up with the crowds of a bigger museum. I mean, they have places, those museums have places, especially here in Philadelphia, but we've seen a trend now with these boutique museums that are popping up across the country.
Yeah, so I think I think it's definitely a trend, and it's these smaller, interactive spaces are definitely drawing all kinds of people. And we do call ourselves an all ages space. So you could have a parent or a family with a few younger children coming in. And I mean, having young children myself, I know we often have a tight time limit on how long we can be out and about. And, for me, I like to have an experience and an option to be able to experience the entire place where I'm taking my kids in about an hour's time, because sometimes that's all we have
Sure.
when we go out and about, and you want to feel like you've explored the entire place, rather than, I need to come back. I didn't get to see this part or this floor, so having that experience, available to people if they are short on time. I feel like that's just what you find these days. People want those fun experiences, but they may not want to spend 3+ hours, in a space. They've got, other things going on, other obligations, and we see, interestingly too, a lot of date nights come through the museum. And I think a lot of that has to do with our extended hours too. But it's the perfect amount of time to go around, with, husband, wife, boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever that may be. It's a really fun, different experience, and it allows people to change it up. It's not your normal dinner and a movie kind of thing. It's, people see illusions differently, and it's a fun thing to talk about and explore with somebody else.
You mentioned your family. So is there one particular or two special illusions that you and your family enjoy perhaps more than some of the others? I mean, there's got to be one that sticks out in your mind as, if you do anything in this museum, you got to do this one.
So my kids would actually say the vortex tunnel. Now, this is one immersive room that you walk into, and within your first few steps, you feel as if that you're completely spinning, that the floor is moving from beneath your feet. But I do promise you're on a flat and stable surface the whole time. They get a thrill out of it. I can only go in there maybe like once before I feel like I need to get my bearings again. But they could go through as many times, as I allowed them to, that's for sure. So that would be their favorite. One of my favorites though, and this is a big favorite at the museum too, is called the Ames Room. And interestingly, it was created by an American ophthalmologist and psychologist named Adelbert Ames. And when you are at the museum, you'll actually see that the room that you enter is totally distorted. The floor is slanted, the room is angled very strangely, but the camera cannot capture that. So we have a camera right on site at the museum. So when you walk in the room, you can look at the screen and you can see that the person on one side appears to be huge and the person on the other side appears to be miniature. And then people will switch spots and, kind of play on just, size and perception. But that's definitely a favorite of mine. I feel like it teaches you something about vision and perception. Plus you get some great photos out of it too.
Sure. a few minutes that we have left. So you just celebrated your first anniversary. What could we expect from the Museum of Illusions in the next year to come?
Sure. I think expect a lot of fun and events. We love to have events at the museum, whether they are family-friendly, focused events, or if they're adults-only events. We've had some great success this first year with some adults-only after-hours events, and it really just kind of elevates the experience. For adults looking for something a little bit different, we might bring in, a bartender, perhaps, some light bites and catering, to really just make it a totally different museum experience. So definitely expect more events coming, and promotions too. Who doesn't like promotions?
Yeah.
We've been around for a year, and we really, it's been, a great first year, of course, but we want to bring in people that have never been in before. So definitely look for some fun promotions that we'll have going on, in 2023. And then beyond that, look for our exhibit refresh. We'll have new things coming very, very soon.
Oftentimes people like to tour museums or visit museums as a group. I mean, it would seem to me that if you're looking as a group of people, group of friends, they're looking to do something fun on a weekend night, that this might be a good place. So you're able to accommodate groups if, in fact, people wanted to get together with a bunch of friends and come into the museum.
Of course, we do group events all the time. So, and groups actually receive a discount. So groups of 15 or more will get 15% off their tickets, and groups of 25 or more get 25% off their admission as well. Another thing we do is private events. We do full facility rentals. We see a lot of corporate events come through. We've had universities come through with, their business school to have, a special event. And it's a unique venue. It's a very different kind of space to have an event, or throw a party, or throw a retirement bash, or just have like a corporate happy hour. Guests are not going to be standing in the same spot at the same table all night. They're going to be walking around, exploring, collaborating, with their colleagues or teammates or family or friends. It's very, very fun for special events and private events.
I suspect that everybody that works there, including yourself, this must be a job that is never boring, and it's a lot of fun. I suspect that's a great job to wake up to every morning, going in knowing that you're going to have a lot of fun at the Museum of Illusions.
Yes, every day is different. Every day is fun, and honestly, seeing the surprise and the reactions on people's faces when they experience these illusions is the best part of all.
Yeah. Well, Stacy, I want to thank you so much for being with us here on the program. I know this is a destination that me and my family are going to try to get out. I mean, it just makes sense. It's located in Old City. It's a great destination. Whether you live in the city, outside of the city, or a tourist in the city, you got to make it a stop on your to-do list to visit the Museum of Illusions in Old City, Philadelphia. And Stacy, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for being with us here on the Philly Factor. My name's Paul Perrello. We'll catch you the next time on our program.